What's up? It's your boy D Change coming at ya with another Daily Dave. So I listened to a podcast recently. It was an interview of a guy named John Tierney, and he wrote a book, I believe, called "Harnessing the Power of Bad." Nope, the book is called "The Power of Bad: How the Negativity Effect Rules Us and How We Can Rule It." So it's interesting because it's kind of like counter to a lot of the ideas that we like more good news and like good stuff in our lives. Realistically, like bad is a stronger motivator for us as people, as human beings, I guess. And if you think about it from like a evolutionary biology standpoint, it makes sense because if you see a tiger and it's coming after you, like you're better off thinking negativity, such as like that's a threat, I need to run, like I'm in danger, that type of stuff, right? But if you had to like wait and think like, oh, I wonder if this tiger is like friendly, like you might you don't pass on your genes that way. So that's the implication. And so in this interview he kind of talks about what are like the bad things in life, why do they motivate us, how we can attempt to like use that in our favor. One like big takeaway for me was that there's that kind of like a ratio of like good to bad, and this is like in relationships, so especially marriage. But it's like for every four good things, like for every one bad thing, you have to counter it with 4 to 5 good things. And I thought like, man, that sucks, because like if you're in like a miserable marriage, or if you fight a lot with your partner, like that's kind of an issue, right? But I've heard this concept before. Like people are willing to kind of view their marriages as transactional. So like if you view it as like a bank account, as long as your balance is positive, your marriage will survive and you'll be good with your partner. But if there's just too much debt, and you have to weigh it appropriately. If there's too many like things that bother one partner or like both partners, or like yeah, there's just like critical, not necessarily mistakes, but downfalls, things that like just don't jive well between the two partners, like that can be a recipe for disaster. And I just thought that was really interesting because I'm like, dang, dude, that means like every time I screw up in a friendly relationship, I have to make sure I kind of pay back in kindness like fivefold, right? Now I don't constantly think about that. Like it's not like oh man, like I really screwed up, I better make sure I do like 5 good things. But I feel like, and this is more of a subtle thing than like I'm actually observing it, and I don't think it's healthy to like constantly try to observe it, but to keep that kind of uh idea in mind, I think really helps, because I mean that naturally goes with how I would want to model my behavior. I would rather be more selfless and altruistic and commit, things that are positive goods or positive things. I don't know what I'm talking about. Commit more like positivity towards my friendships than negativity, right? And so that's why I feel especially bad when I do feel like I've wronged someone in a friendship. The other takeaway was that basically from a religious standpoint, people who like believed in a very terrible hell tended to like be more successful in a lot of like different disciplines. And that's just purely because the motivation of like like the actual punishment for I don't know, like failure or the consequences of wrongdoing and stuff like that actually push the person more towards kind of an attitude of setting themselves up for behaviors that lead them to success. So I found that really interesting, um, because I guess for me it's just like it doesn't seem like a proper correlation in the beginning, but it makes a lot more sense if you're able to like connect all the dots and contextualize it. So I'm like, oh yeah, that kind of explains a lot. I mean that's that in a way that's kind of part of the American ethos as well, right? Um, for such a like a quote unquote advanced country, such a developed nation, it's still very religious. There's a lot of a very high religious and devout population in this country, and you'll notice a lot of like entrepreneurs, business owners, successful C-suite, like corporation executives. Yeah, they're all pretty religious people. There's a lot of them around here. So, I mean, it's kind of like an observation, and you can see the correlations involved. But yeah, it's super interesting. I think I want to pick up the book. There's a lot of books I want to pick up, and I really should be using quarantine time to read. But instead, I make daily daves. I surf the internet for dank memes, and I stream video games. So, but whatever, that's just how life is. Um, I also talked to a friend about kind of like potential business ideas, or I guess like what could we do to kind of supplement our current income slash situations, because I think I've said it in the past, but like you like technically your job is not ever secure. You would want to be able to develop something on the side, or have passive income, or have other things available to you, so that you're not just relying on one source of income. And yeah, it's just it's difficult purely because if you're not in the practice of like coming up with ideas and executing on businesses, it seems like a really far-fetched thing to reach for. But we kind of had a good exercise of like, hey, like what about this, what about that, what about your time in Japan, how would this work out, what about in this current situation, what problems need to be solved. So that's nice. It's nice to have that mental exercise, and I think I want to get into more of a habit, like just really small, like every day, what's one new idea you might be able to come up with. I got inspiration from James Altucher of the James Altucher podcast, but he says he likes to buy these he doesn't even buy notebooks. He buys guest check pads, the ones that like people at restaurants write on, like the servers at restaurants, and they take your order, or the waiters and waitresses. He was saying that like every day he tries to come up with 10 ideas, and most of the time they're all bad. But he says that if you get into this habit of constantly doing it, eventually you're going to compound on the fact that you tap into your creativity, you've practiced it, and you'll basically come to a point where you have a lot more good ideas than you thought you could produce in like a year or so, right? So I think that's like a cool exercise. But that just goes to show, like, anything you want to do requires work, right? And you got to start somewhere. And so I think the thing that's the most daunting to me is always like, all right, come up with a business plan and all that for like a $5 million company. It's like, whoa, like, how do I even start that? But if you're able to see like, hey, there's a need for people who want very basic software that does this, or like people are willing to pay for custom made digital postcards, like that's like, whoa, okay, like that's a start. It's not big. It's kind of like saying, I start making web comics or something, and like I sell merchandise, or like the digital postcard, sell that for like $1 or like $5. Maybe you'll make $5 in 1 month or 6 months or a year. Not a big deal, but you know what? That's like the start. And then from there, I feel like once you get started and once you gain momentum, it's a lot easier to move to the next steps. But there's a lot of like leaps and bounds that you have to go through. And make no mistake, it's not like, everyone's going to be able to start a business and everyone's going to be successful. You got to learn from the failures as well, right? So anyway, that's just been something I've been thinking about today, and other days as well. Just accumulation of that type of that series of ideas. So yeah, I guess that's what's been on my mind lately. I don't know if you have any cool ideas you want to drop them in the comments. Don't worry, we won't steal them. Though, to be honest, like, it's not about ideas necessarily, it's about execution. So like, ideas are cheap, but actually being able to run something or accomplish something is much more important. And it's very true. You got to actually operate a business, not dream about making one all day long. Story of my life. So anyway, yeah, that's my talk for today. That's my TED Talk. Thank you for coming. This was the Daily Dave. See ya in the next one. Peace out.